And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to GMAT Club's MBA Fair. It's already that time of year. Can you believe it? I actually can believe it, which is why I'm sitting here today. This session is about MBA costs. It's about the actual cost. Are the schools lying to us? Maybe. That's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about return on investment. We are here to talk about truly the MBA experience and all the dollars that are coming out of our pockets to these incredibly wealthy institutions that, frankly, are taking advantage of us. But we're okay with that because we'll make a lot of money in the end. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Evan. I am one of the admins or directors of GMAT Club. I tend to do a lot of videos, or I used to. Prior to starting at UVA Darden, I am part of the class of 2025, so I am a student here at the wonderful Darden School of Business. And joining me for this session are two other students. I am the token non-M7, as has been discussed repeatedly during our pre-chat of this, are two other panelists. So Abhijay, why don't you introduce yourself, and Salome will get to you thereafter.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Evan. Hi, everyone. My name is Abhijay. I'm currently a second-year MBA candidate at Harvard Business School. And yeah, super excited to be on this panel. I'm originally from India and excited to share more as we progress. Over to you, Salome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this, connecting all the way from California, very bright and sunny California, today at least. I am a first-year MBA student at Stanford GSB, and just as you guys, I'm really excited to be here and share the true cost behind the MBA and discuss more how it works for each school and the MBA programs.
And again, we are so happy that you've joined us here. We are aware that both of you are very busy. GMAT Club is aware that I am very busy, but we all showed up nonetheless, and we really appreciate the time. Folks, the goal of this session, again, we all understand the sticker costs, the tuition that you see on the front page. It's going to be, I think at this point, we're over 200. Are we pushing $200,000, $150,000, $200,000 in that range for 2-year MBAs? But is that the whole cost? And most of the time, the answer is no. So we are here to figure out what are those hidden costs? What is really going to be your total bottom line? Because again, we all take finance and accounting. The bottom line is just a little important. So Abjay, I'm going to start with you, buddy. So beyond tuition, just giving a general ballpark, and we can go into the nitty gritty as we progress through some of this. What are some of the additional expenses that you weren't anticipating when you first started at HBS?
Yeah, definitely. I did look up on the website the tuition, which was already a lot. But one cost which I came to HBS and found out was the cost of doing the trips. So we have these huge trips, probably at every 1 or 2 in a semester. And those can get really expensive depending on how many you do and how long the trip is. But they definitely add a significant amount of burden on the already high on costs of the MBA. So typically, these are typically like organized or called treks, which are organized mostly sometimes by students. Great experience overall, but it ultimately depends on how much you want to spend on these, right? So the costs of these can go as high as like $1,500 to anywhere but about $4,000 as well for some of the bigger trips. And this is per trip, right? So if you now end up doing like 5 of these trips over 2 years, that's almost $1,000 to what you'll be spending on the MBA tuition.
And is that the whole trip, or does that, no, are we just talking about the actual experience and we also have to include airfare, food, the Ubers to and from?
Yeah, so this was, I mean, this is 4,500 probably for, like, let's say on the upper end of it, like $4,000 that you're paying for, let's say, a 10-day trip. But you also have to pay for, like you said, the flight costs, right? Those are another, whatever, $1,000, $2,500 on top of this. So it can get really expensive on how many trips that you go for. There are also like shorter trips, which are around the range of, for example, if I'm doing a trip within, for example, somewhere in the US itself, but that also would be about $1,000. But these costs, I'm saying, are not factoring the ticket, like the flight prices. So you can add another $1,500 for the flight tickets as well. And of course, if you do any additional shopping, do additional add-on events at these places, it's still adds on to the cost.
And quickly, Nansalom, I'll ask you the same question. Are these treks for recruiting purposes? Are they for strictly socialization? Because as people who are watching this hopefully are aware, there are three pillars of the MBA experience, and you have to balance two of the three. It's academic, it's social, and then it's recruiting. And the recruiting part of it is the job component. So social and recruiting are very different, although there is some overlap. Are these treks for social? Are they for recruitment, or is it some eclectic mix? What is that like?
Yeah, so these ones which I mentioned were mainly the social treks, which are planned, like I said, by the students itself, and sometimes just by your friends group, right? When you decide to go on a trip, I would say there are also academic treks, which are much definitely on the, at least in HPS, on the lesser side. They're not super expensive. You ideally have to pay like maybe $100 or so just for the trek, and then the flight. So those are on the cheaper side, and they last maybe like even shorter, like 2 or 3 days at most. The ones I was referring to, which these big sticker prices, were the ones which are the social trips where you actually spend a week. It's more like a cultural immersion experience where you're spending that time in a country, and so I was talking to the social aspect more.
So what I'm hearing is those are kind of required to go to here.
I'd say yes. I mean, I'd like personally say that you should at least do 1 or 2 of those in your HPS or in your any MBA experience. I just feel like the bonds you build on during those trips are invaluable, and I think you learn a lot about the new country. And probably this is the best time for you to do them, given that you're going to be on career trajectories where you may not have as much time later. So I do at least a couple.
Yes, I hear those yacht trips in the summer are a lot of fun. Let's hear from you. So again, you're in Stanford, so you're on the West Coast. Obviously, we're on the East Coast, nice and dark and very, very, very depressing outside at the moment. So let's hear maybe something a little bit more cheery. Was there any costs that caught you by surprise outside of the tuition sticker price and maybe some of the things they advertise online?
Yep, absolutely. So happy to jump on that. I think very much in line with Abjay's experience and what HBS does. Stanford also has GSB lots of trips, and there are separate Slack channels dedicated just for the trips. And I think also called tracks. You can choose countries, you can choose states to visit. Really a diverse set of experiences that you can choose from. And I think kind of it goes almost without saying that these are usually the core trips, as has been already mentioned, that help you form the very important bonds for your life in general. So I think while it's not required, right, it is a good idea to keep in the back of the mind that you will have to, if you want to build these relationships, right, participate in 1 or 2 or 3 or more, depending on how many you can afford. Another point, sometimes we have like small trips. So, and they can come out of nowhere almost. They could be the weekend trips somewhere, Lake Tahoe, for example, or in our case, right? And these are usually the trips organized not last minute, but like 3-4 weeks ahead of the time. And there's still a lot of people going. And I think that's another thing to consider. They're going to be far cheaper than going abroad. So it's not going to be a couple of grants, but it is going to be a few $100s. So I think these are also the costs, but also potentially the other travel opportunities that you guys could explore. Again, if the financial question is in a burden, or like you're not in the space right now to travel abroad or to spend. That I think on another note, another kind of expense that didn't pop up necessarily, it is available on the website though, is the family costs associated. So I'm here with my spouse, and we kind of live together currently in EVGR dormitory. So it's for graduate student housing, and we have a 2-bedroom apartment, right? And I think what the costs don't usually mention is the added living expense and essentially just the added non-tuition expenses that you would have if you travel here or to any MBA program with your family. But again, that said, at least our campus has an incredible housing selection. So you can really choose great places to live in, or you can also choose to live off campus, which I believe would be a cheaper solution. And I think also for full disclosure, for me, my experience with GSB was I first applied I was a deferred applicant, so I was deferred for 1 year. A deferral, for those who don't know, is you apply slightly earlier in your career. I'm currently 24. I applied when I was 23. And usually the deferral is 1 to 4 years. So in that time, you're able to build your career or work on your product startup. Since I'm originally from Ukraine, I was in Ukraine at that time doing my startup work, humanitarian work, and hence in a year that flew by, I'm now here. But in that year, I also applied for a Knight Hennessy Scholarship, which is a leadership program that also sponsors your experience at Stanford. And it is an incredible program, but it also does provide full ride tuition. So it means that your living expenses and your tuition is going to be covered. And I think we're going to touch on this later in the session. For sure, explore different scholarships available, even if your university doesn't provide financial aid or loans, etc.
So what I'm hearing is, treks were probably the biggest thing that caught you both by surprise. We're going to talk about living expenses. We're going to talk about financial aid and support. I promise. But it sounds like students can estimate maybe another like $5,000 to $10,000 for these trips, for these treks that are very, very important to building the community around them that are going to carry them for the rest of their lives, in tandem with the fact that you're doing it for recruiting as well. From a Darwin perspective, since I guess I'll have to answer my own question, I'll try and keep the ball rolling here. I will say the treks were definitely part of it. The flights to and from. So I am from the Boston area. So me flying home and trying to figure out how to Uber back and forth was quite expensive. I'll say not budgeting 100% for food. That was definitely a tough one. When I first moved in, so I am not in school housing, unlike Salome and Abjay, and we'll talk about that. But one of the things that hit me and my roommate the minute we came here was we don't have a washer or a dryer. We're gonna need to buy that stuff. Oh wait, our living room is completely empty. Wait, our bedrooms are completely empty. Like we're gonna need to buy beds. We're gonna need to buy televisions. We're gonna need to buy sofas, and these costs add up really fast. Oh wait, we're gonna need to buy internet and electricity, and so you do forget how expensive things just become really fast. And it's the little nitty gritty things on top of some of the bigger things that we've already talked about, like treks. Darwin went to Columbia with Duke over, I believe, over fall break. I think we go to Israel and Germany, and I know Stanford and HBS do something similar. These costs add up fast. So just on treks alone, I think we're up to 5,000 or 10,000 additional. But Salome, I'll go to you and we'll go to Abjay and we'll kind of reverse the order here. There's also opportunity costs, which people tend to forget. Now, in business school, we're reminded of it constantly because we have to do WAC and CAPM and, okay, what are we giving up in order to invest in a project? Well, here it's a 2-year commitment if you're doing it full time, which I believe all three of us are, meaning we're probably giving up well over $100,000 worth of income at minimum. So I'm starting with you. How did that factor into your decision in terms of your calculus and getting your MBA?
Yep. So I think for me, the opportunity to study, and Stanford was the only school that I applied to, another full disclosure. So for me, I came into this very much well knowing what's going to happen if I get in and what happens for the next 2 years. I think that if the person is doing the right math, and if it is not a good strategy, then I guess it's best not to pursue it. And all of the calculations that I have performed in my head, this was the best decision moving forward. And I think the opportunity cost of doing something for the 2 years and giving up, say, 100K in income that you would have is very much offset by everything that's going to come afterwards, let alone just from the recruiting, but also from the experiences that you will have. I think this is such a truly transformative experience that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I did my undergrad also in business, and I did business at Georgetown. So very much similar to what I do currently at MBA, but the experience itself is so different exactly because we all come in with industry expertise, some experience. We come in with some already have families, right? Established very different career paths and life paths. And you meet truly extraordinary people in this cohort, and it goes for any MBA, I think, out there, not just at GSB. So I think when considering these opportunity costs, yes, financial, I think there's definitely like a burden there, and you are possibly losing, but you're gaining so much, not just financially, that will trickle down the road and will support you in your career and life in general. So I'd say, again, I was really passionate. I think if there's a passion and real desire, strong desire to do an MBA and a good purpose behind it, not just do an MBA for the sake of having it, but actually have the goal behind it, I think that's the best combination and the one that is going to be more fruitful and successful in the end.
And Abjay, how about you, bud? How'd that additional cost, the hidden cost, if you will, of not working, that's a big opportunity cost. Did it factor into you getting your MBA?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, you can always do the standard calculation of, you don't work for 2 years and you miss out on the salary. But there's a different way to think about it. Like, let's say you don't do an MBA, right? I feel there is maybe a negative NPV to it, right? For example, you basically could have done so much more, and your career could have taken such a big path if you took an MBA. So the fact that you didn't do an MBA would have been probably negative NPV, which is also definitely a way people don't think about it. That's one way to think about it. But primarily, I feel like apart from the standard calculation of 2 years, I really feel that the bigger value of an MBA comes in later in your career, probably when you more need it. Let's say 10-15 years after passing out, which is when it actually kicks in and you're like, oh, this is what this university or this MBA has given me, right? So I see it more as a long term play. Definitely, I think the difference between business schools is probably minimal in the start, right? It basically makes difference more towards the end. So that's how I see it. And I think the biggest it's such a big intangible, right? Like the network that you take with you from the school is such a big intangible that you cannot make enough, like you can't assign a monetary value to it at any given point in time. But I feel, like I said, that it basically makes a lot more sense towards the end when you're like 20 years down your career, and when you see, oh yes, this network of my MBA classmates has helped me a lot. So it's very hard to actually quantify this entire thing.
So not even doing discount cash flow analysis here. No, not even doing net present value. We've already racked up approximately $110,000. That's, in my mind, conservative in hitting cost of an MBA already. So for everyone watching this and they're thinking, holy cow, don't worry, folks. There are more hidden costs. We're getting there. It gets more fun, believe me. But maybe there is some bright side to that. And that comes in the form of financial aid. And before I hit financial aid, I'll echo what Abjay said very fast and just say, look, if you're making $75,000 a year and you go up to $150K a year plus, yeah, it's going to pay off. Your break even's pretty close. But down the road, if your goal is to become CEO, you're not getting there usually without an MBA. So also keep that in mind. There are intangible benefits to it as well. But financial aid and scholarships. Did financial aid and scholarships help you? So we'll go back around the horn. We'll just keep going kind of like in reverse order here. So Abjay, back to you. Financial aid and scholarships. Did it have an impact on your decision to get an MBA? And if so, how much of an impact, how much money did it take out of that huge lump sum that we're now seeing?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story there. So
I love interesting.
So basically, I had my admit to HPS round 2, and I was like, "Damn, I got into HPS! I'm super excited. I'm going to HPS," and that was the top of my mind. And it's like after getting the admit, couple of days later, I hear that I receive an email that we have a financial aid program at HPS. I'm like, wow, I didn't know about this until I had applied, and this seemed to be like a cherry on top. I was like, okay, and it's not merit based at all. It's purely based on how much you've earned and how much you've saved in the past whatever 4 years of your work experience. So I was pretty thrilled that I'm going to get some money from HPS, which was I was like, great, let me apply for it. And I submitted my application for a financial aid post getting the admit, and in I think 4 weeks I heard back. I got a 50% tuition waiver. So I was thrilled, and that's just one of the perks these schools sometimes give you. So I ended up paying just 50% of the tuition. So about $90,000 over the 2 years was sponsored by like HPS. So we have a financial aid program. So you have alums who have graduated 20, 25 years back who actually subsidize the education of the students who who have basically don't have so much savings. So it's purely financial aid, like I mentioned, but that's definitely a cherry on top. So I was pretty much thrilled to have gotten this, and I didn't know before applying to HPS that they had such a program. So that was a very interesting revelation that came out post application to HPS.
All right. And Salam, how about you? You said you got a full ride also to Stanford. I assume that made a huge impact, and the costs have obviously been slimmed down quite a bit as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely blessed really to have gotten into this program. Apart from, again, funding, they have a lot of programming that really helps you grow as a leader, and especially the leader in a global context. And I think for me that brings into the discussion also very similar process, by the way, to Abijay. Once you get in, you get this email from financial aid, hey, apply for financial aid. And the process usually is before my Knight Hennessy deadline was due. Very similar process, but they also kind of, and Abijay, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least in my school, they also send you different scholarship opportunities before they actually put you through the loan options that you have. Especially as an international student, you don't really have many options in terms of taking the loan. The rates aren't going to be great, and it's kind of, it is a very tricky process in general. So I think it was like, well, before the program started, they sent us a good list of scholarships, and those scholarships involved ones for US citizens and ones for non-US citizens. And it also involved like country by country. And to me, that was so helpful. I imagine how hard it is to like get all of this information and then to share with the student body, but it is incredibly helpful, I think. And, many students don't know of the scholarships that existed. So even here at Stanford, at GSB, when I say I'm a Knight Hennessy scholar, people go, whoa, what's that? And when I share, and there are MBA 2s, for example, they didn't know this program existed. So I think it really is a lot of research that you have to put in if you want to get either loan, financial aid, or scholarship. But if you do the work, it's going to pay off at the end. I think that is definitely something that is worth pursuing. There are also smaller scholarships that are 5 to 10K, and they're great. There are really great also societies or organizations that will also then help you with recruiting. So if you are considering to recruit in general, right, I think also consider joining these organizations or applying for these organizations, because apart from your MBA network, that's also going to be a great additional network that you can be part of. So hopefully that kind of offers some more detail.
It doesn't. It helps offset, again, that huge cost. So yes, we were plus 110,000 conservatively, but we're bringing down the cost, assuming you get scholarships. I know at UVA, we have a ton of them that I've never heard of, or at least until coming here, like the Jefferson Scholarship, I think is one. Like we had the Stamp Scholar, like tons of opportunities for you to defray some of these costs. So there is help along the way to make sure that you can pay for it. Or unlike, heck, you could do what we did last year's session, and you can go and watch it for our MBA fair. I think we had 2 or 3 people who just said, yeah, let's spend $210,000 on an MBA. Say out the loans and let's do it. So there are varying levels here of commitment, financially speaking. The next thing that I want to talk about is just the overall cost of living. So cost of books, materials, actual like school supplies, and then living in general. And I can start off by saying, again, I was not expecting, at least until I probably should have been thinking about it, I had to buy a backpack. I forgot about a backpack. I had to buy a brand new laptop, which was, quite expensive because of all the materials that they need you to upload and be able to handle. I had to buy all the furniture in my townhouse. Again, I'm of the 3 people here, I'm the only one who isn't living on campus, on school grounds. I am living in a townhouse that is like school adjacent. I had to buy binders for the first time. Like, again, again, GMAT Club, we're so prepared. I had to buy an actual binder, and this is called Strategic Thinking in Action, which actually isn't the worst class in the world. I had to buy pens. I had to buy pencils, Ticonderoga, and I had to buy paper. I had to buy lamps. There were a lot of things I had not considered until I came down here and started going through class again and saying, "Oh goodness, that's right." So I'd love to hear. I think I started with Abjay last time, so I'll start with you. What cost did you incur for supplies? And by the way, I'll just mention again that like paper was another completely random one, and from a Darn perspective, we get our cases. Like Darn will print every case for us. I think most T15 print your cases for you, so you don't have to pay for them. So that does help a little bit. I have random books on my shelf that they've given us, but overall it's just a bunch of random school supplies. So what has your experience been, not only with the cost of living but with school supplies?
Great question. So I think, and it's so interesting to see the differences between schools. So we get charged in tuition, I don't know, if a couple $100 for, or maybe $100 for printing. And then you have your key card and you go to the printer room, and one piece of paper costs like 0.0001 cent or something. So we do have the costs associated, but they're already covered. And that was the same, by the way, at Georgetown. So I just think that schools do it differently. Since I just graduated from my undergrad a year ago, so there was just 1 year in between, I knew that there were going to be supply expenses, but I also kind of went through during the COVID. I was like, I'm going to try to do it just with the laptop and one pen if I need to, and print out only if I really, really have to. And I will say that I didn't get binders though. I did get some very limited school supplies that I mean, that's still an expense and something that you don't usually think of. And that's very correct to say, kind of, you have to go through this like back to school that you haven't done in a few years, right? So that was definitely that. I think there's separately like different supplies that you have to get, like books. And I got myself an iPad, and I got myself the attachment to the iPad so that I could bring that instead of the laptop, for example, right? So there are, and I see so many different tech in classrooms. So people are using different kinds of laptops, different kinds of tablets, all sorts of things. So I think here you have all the options, and just how you're going to learn is how you're going to kind of strategically think about it. Books, yes. Sometimes you have to buy cases. Sometimes you have to get access to software. I think it really depends by the course. And then there's, of course, and I see Annika put a question in the chat, like the
I'll try and address it.
Yeah, which I think we're gonna discuss later. But I think I also got myself markers, so that was another thing. And then they are, by the way, provided. So that was a waste of, in every room they are provided. But yes, I think, be mindful, but also don't overspend. I guess you can buy it in bookstore or Amazon whenever you actually have to. But the setting up, like how you did with the townhome that you got, I think is actually interesting, because since and Abhijay, maybe you can touch on this, but since I live in graduate housing, I didn't have to get any furniture, like beds and mattresses are provided. It's just if you want to upgrade, or if you want to get yourself TV or anything like that, or you then invest into it. So I think that, like, it's being mindful of having to buy towels, sheets, like
Yeah, I completely forgot to mention that.
your entire kitchen has to be like supplied. Like, you need a tea kettle, you need so many things. You need to buy olive oil, you need to buy sugar, you need to buy salt, like all of these small things that you wouldn't actually think of because you lived in your home for a long time, and these are kind of the costs. And I think, at least for us, it was a pretty big kind of expense to move in and to settle everything. So I'd add like anywhere from 1 to 4K into that setup, depending on how much you splurge on setting your home up.
And I was just about to ask for a number on that, and Abjay, before I hear from you. So I will say personally, I mean, I on school supplies, again, a lot of it was a laptop. I did get an iPad, which is useless in my opinion. I switched to pen and paper, and now I have like a $600 paperweight. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you can spend $2,000 to $3,000 getting yourself plus $4,000 getting yourself up to speed on all the tech stuff that you need. And then I can get into the details on furnishing, but that was that wasn't cheap either. So again, we're starting to pile up just a little bit more. But Abjay, how about you, buddy? Those costs, materials, and living. I mean, same as me and Salome or something else?
Yeah, I just like basically arrange the cost in descending order and just tell you the
Sure.
ones. Yeah, so the major cost I had moving in, number one was definitely the laptop cost. So I wanted a decent laptop which would cost anywhere between, I don't know, 1,500 to maximum $2,000. I That's the number one cost. The second cost was, like you all mentioned, so I'm living in the dorm in HPS, and the main cost there was setting the dorm up. But the good thing was that most of the dorms in HPS are pretty much set up already for you. Even we have something called small kitchenettes, so they also already have like kettles and pans and everything available, so they're almost ready to go. Only things you need to buy in things for your daily use you couldn't have got from your home. So for example, your personal maybe a personal mini refrigerator if you want to keep a small one in your room, or you want to keep maybe a few plates, or few things like that. Basically minimal expenditure. Maximum if you get a refrigerator, it would cost you around $150. That's the maximum we spent, because I was living in the dorms, like I said, so most of it was furnished. The third thing was the printing. I think printing at HPS is also not paid. We are charged 10 cents for every paper, every page that we print. So that was this also can amount if you are given a lot of additional things to be printed. Because I remember in my first year we had a lot of assignments to be done, and we had to carry these printouts, couple of printouts every case. So that builds onto the cost, maybe eventually about $60-$70. That can build up as well. But the good news was that the cases, the HPS cases, were given to us as part of the tuition, so they were usually printed and handed out to us. Only the additional things needed print. So these three were the main costs which come to my mind as I was living in the dorm. So they were a bit on the lower side. But if you were, like, for example, like even trying to set up something, it could be a much bigger cost. Can talk a little bit more about that as well, on how it works. And at HPS we have student housing. So we have apartments on campus, so usually students buy from other students, so they get better rates. It gets handed over years, so basically you get discounted stuff. But ultimately, yes, that's an expense too. You can spend anywhere between $400-$500 just furnishing or buying furniture for your house and then reselling it later for whatever, but you pay some amount, some delta there.
Which again makes a lot of sense. And yes, mine is a unique experience because Darden does not have housing. We just built a massive hotel literally at the end of the business school grounds. You guys can look it up. It's called the Forum Hotel. It's right at the end of the drive. We have 100-yard drive where you know all this grass, and you finally get up to Darden, which is this beautiful building. But they have this massive hotel and all this space. You know, that it could have been student housing. If I had to complain, I would say that could have been student housing. But instead we live in townhouses and apartments, and so we're kind of spread out. To Anika and Douglas, I will ask your questions in 1 minute, but I do want to hit on this one because this did catch me by surprise. Health insurance. Did either of you get caught off guard by health insurance and costs? Because I was completely blown away, not only by the fact that they charge it, but by the cost. And it really did make me kind of bitter. So Salome, you had a reaction? Tell me about it.
Yes. So they do. The cost here is, I think, 7K, like thousand in insurance. I come from Ukraine, where usually you don't get an insurance. The healthcare is provided. But if you want to, you can always opt for private insurance and get that. But that usually costs like a few $100s, not a few thousands. So in both my high school and undergrad, I did have insurance, and I did have US insurance, and they were 3 to 4K. So seeing a 7 to 8K price here was a bit shocking. And knowing now at least the way it works, the healthcare in the US works, also understanding like, okay, these are the tiers, these are out of network, etc. And to see what's included and what's not, it's actually kind of interesting because the cost is so high, but there are still better options at a better, like at a higher price. So you think like, wow, but maybe it's the California thing. Can't comment on that because I don't know, not an expert. But I think this for sure consider, especially if you're an international student, sometimes they require you to have an insurance. So that means that, yes, you will have to get an insurance. And since I came in here with my spouse, he could get his from work, but we also decided to shift him for California-based insurance. And we just did that. So consider also that you may have to move your kids or your spouse to the insurance that the school provides, or you're able to choose. By the way, for example, you can ask for a waiver. It's easy to apply for as long as the insurance meets all the requirements. But there are cheaper options. So I know that students got options that are like 1 to 2K. So definitely there is a way to save on it. I would not recommend if you're an international student, again, because you're away from home and you may need some urgent care. And it's really important to have an insurance that would cover it. And especially if you have in general just medical needs, I would not necessarily try to save on insurance. I would pay whatever is needed to make sure that you get the healthcare that you need.
Abjay, how about you, bud? Was the cost a little shocking or no?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on about the American healthcare system, but I just
Let's not.
I was
Let's stick to cost.
but I just like that hit me hard. Like when I remember this was a amount that was posted on the bill, and I was like similar range. I think it was $4,000 or something per semester, and which basically means that you're paying 7 to 8K just for the whole year, and it's a very big amount, and I think it was mandatory for us we could not opt out of it unless we had an alternate insurance. So it was mandatory. But the thing is, even when you have this insurance, when you, for example, visit a doctor, you still have the system called copay. So you still have to pay a part of it, despite you having the insurance. So that's also an add-on cost, right? It's not free to see a medical expert. So yeah, so that was like a big cost as well, but it was something you can't avoid. You'd have to pay it. And it was also add another whatever $7,000, $8,000 to your bill.
Yep. So again, we're now adding another 7,000 or 8,000. I will say UVA is a little bit cheaper. I think I'm in the 3 to 4K range, like for the year. But I was working and I had health insurance. And it was coming out of my paycheck. Not working, and then here's another $3,000 to $4,000. I can't be put on I'm an American. I can't be put on my parents' medical plan anymore. Like there's no way to offset that, and it's a requirement. Like you need health insurance in the States. UVA requires it, just like HBS and Stanford. We had students who were considering getting like Medicare because they just didn't want to pay for it, and it was technically cheaper. So that one caught a lot of people off guard, myself included. I want to get to some of the questions that some of our audience has been asking. So I'm really fast. Does your scholarship cover your health insurance? Because I think with UVA it does.
Yeah, it does. Mine does too. But I saw the price first way before the scholarship came in, so I saw it as an additional cost essentially that you would get. My scholarship does cover everything, but not the spouse, but just me. But living expenses, old insurance, and then tuition itself. So yes, and then they have a few more stipends for different programs. But
all right. Truno, hope that answered your question. Okay, our first audience question, second, comes from Anika. And Anika asks, do you feel your day-to-day discretionary expenses in business school are the same as they were before, more or less? She's referring to stuff like groceries, going out to eat, and normal cost of living. And I was going to hit on this, so this is a perfect time to touch on it. Let us hear from Abjay. So how do you feel? You're in Boston. Cost of living is pretty high. California's insanely high too. So this is going to be a very interesting question. How do you guys feel about your discretionary spending and expenses?
Yeah, I feel especially on the side of just a recurring expense is when you're eating on campus. So if you're, for example, eating a lunch every day at HPS, it costs about at least $10, and it can go as high as $15 to $20, and that's per meal. So if you're eating 2 meals on campus, add literally like $20 per day, and now multiply that by number of working days that you have.
Call it 200.
Yeah, so basically in a month you're spending about whatever, like 600, 500, about $500 to $600 just on food. On food. And this is basically if you're eating outside. It's definitely much lesser if you're cooking, but this expense you need to account. So at least I'm basically at HPS, we have so many cases to read that there's no time to actually like cook, at least for me. So I eat at least one meal on from the catering here. So that's like you end up paying about whatever $250 a month. So you add that and multiply that with the number of months. It's a cost. It's a big cost. The better way to do is a lot of people just end up buying groceries. So that's, I would say, I don't know how these groceries in Boston specifically, if they're more expensive compared to other cities in the US or not. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. So, but the idea is if you do that and you cook over the weekend, take out like 4 hours, your cost will be much lesser. Also time investment. So there's a trade-off there. But from my perspective, I can tell you can add about $10 to $20 a day easily for food on campus.
And again, so do the quick math. Another $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 right there. Salome, how do you feel? And again, aside from food, because now we've tacked on that, what about discretionary spending? Again, maybe going to the movies every now and again, or clothing, or Netflix, or buying chocolate ice cream as a dessert, or like just your normal life. Has that been impacted? If so, have you seen your costs go up or down as a result?
That's a very great question. So I'm not sure if I'm the best to give like a response to this, because we have such a different system set in place. So my husband and I, we adore cooking and the process of preparing meals. And to us, this is a kind of a family thing that we do, a hobby, a passion, you name it. And then we love to host people over. So that means that we actually grocery shop every week. And then we did splurge on everything that is related to kitchen. And we continue to do it. So I guess it's like, it's an expense that we have that is, we are aware that it's a higher expense than usual. Even if we had chosen to eat on campus, I think it would have been cheaper. But GSB has different types of kind of food options for you, so that you can kind of, as a regular student, can swipe the card, get yourself like 20 meal blocks for, I don't know, half a quarter, and then use those. You can also go to our Buckle, which is our cafeteria. They have great selection of food, and then there's no block type purchase, so you have to actually just purchase whatever you get. And then just as Abijay's, it's like $10 to $25 per meal. So these are the costs that you definitely have to be very much mindful of. We also have lots of dinners, and we go out, and then yes, movie nights, and yes, going to every weekend. Like you can of course choose different things, and there are plenty of options to choose from. But again, we have a car, so we drive the car. You have to add that as an expense. And then we go to different locations that are, most often you have to get a ticket before you can go in, right, and to explore stuff. And then in terms of the clothing, I think for California it's different. I had to tune down my wardrobe, so I had to actually buy stuff that's less business casual. So that to me was new. I think in general, if you go to an MBA, I would recommend that you have to get a suit or kind of get yourself into smart casual, business casual outfits, especially if you plan to do recruiting. I mean, even in California, you still have to dress up for those. So I think these are the kind of costs. And then also subscriptions, yes, Netflix and like other ones that you have for just yourself, personal purposes, but there are also great subscriptions that you can get as a student. And these are usually like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, all the other journals, lots of different tools that you can use that are really helpful for productivity or for schoolwork management, etc. So just make sure that you have behind in the back that you'll spend like around $100 a month in subscriptions. So yeah, hopefully.
In addition to all the clothing and all the groceries, and you can see how these are now thousands upon thousands of dollars. I'll mention that I found out recently, apparently we have access to Dolly 2, which is like the image generating AI. I have a Wall Street Journal subscription through the school. I'll say a couple of things that caught me off guard, but again, we do repeatedly as costs. One, and by the way, my expenses are through the roof compared because I was back home before the pandemic. I didn't eat out ever. I saved every penny I could. And now my life is literally go to the cafeteria after my classes, grab a sandwich from there, eat, case, hope I have enough time to do my cases, go to my learning team, eat Chick-fil-A or some other piece of fast food, something, go to bed and hope I get 7.5 hours of sleep. So like my costs are through the roof, but we do vineyards, a lot of vineyards in California, a ton in Virginia, by the way. Oh my goodness. We do bus tours. We do like wine buses. We have something called the Darn Soon Association where we pay like a $500 fee at the start of the year. And then you're covered for 2 years for every event, but you can pay a la carte. So each event moving forward. So cost of living, especially in Virginia, is actually like lower. It's less than Boston and certainly less than California, but you're still paying a lot. And you have to consider the fact that your expenses, unless you're by yourself, are going to go up. Like, unless you live by yourself already, your expenses are going up and by a pretty measurable amount. So be prepared to incur an additional like $25,000 over a 2-year period to account for these expenses. Next question comes from, and by the way, and Nika, I hope we answered your question. Our next question comes from Douglas. Like the suit, he's already ready for his MBA. Douglas asks, how much do you think it's enough for a couple going for a 2-year MBA on average, maybe giving examples of a cheap and an expensive city? I have to imagine he's asking like, how much do you need saved up in order to move, and assuming one spouse doesn't work. I'm not sure how to answer that because it would. If either of you two want to step up and try and answer, please do, because one of you is married. So Salome, given you're the married one and you're in a relationship, how do you feel about this question?
So I think your living expenses are going to be similar-ish to what they have been before, because there's going to be, unless you like, depends on where you live. Like we lived in Ukraine, so the prices are definitely different. But before coming to Stanford, we lived in DC area in Arlington. So our expenses in Arlington and California are very similar to each other. I think it's good to plan, especially, for example, if your spouse doesn't work. But if your spouse works, I think in terms of the finances, you set it up the way that you guys feel most comfortable. In terms of the cities, you know what? There is a big difference. We had 4 or 5% sales tax in Virginia and DC and in general DMV area, and here I think it's like 10 or 11%. So be ready for the different tax brackets or taxes in general, especially if you work in the US. So my spouse, again, because we moved, is going to have a different now tax for his income, and it kind of goes as an additional, I guess, expense for the family incurred. Is that just? I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I really hope it does. I think,
yeah, I think it's kind of.
In terms of like how much you have to save up, I think it's such a like personalized question. Every couple will have their own expenses. I just know that for us to get going in an apartment, in any apartment, furnished or not, there's always at least like some set of resources required to get all the personal items and all the hardware and software and tech, etc. So again, I think just planning ahead is the best thing to do. Like get yourself an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is, and then plan ahead. And I think that's going to help you stay within the budget too when you come to the MBA program.
And if I can just add on to that, Doug, again, keep in mind that your expenses aren't going to change very much. So if by saved up, I mean, you can take out loans to cover your expenses for this. But I'd also like to keep in mind for everyone watching, moving expenses can be pretty high too. You can tack on $5,000 to $10,000 if you're moving from a house across the country, or heck, even across the globe for that matter, that's another expense to keep in mind. I had friends who paid an arm and a leg to move their entire family and their houses here. So keep that in mind. Let's see. We do have another question from Paul. So we do want to wrap this up within the next 5 minutes. So if you do have any other questions, please ask now. But the way I envision this is I'm going to ask Paul's question, although I just make sure it's even appropriate before I do that. And then we're going to have some closing comments. And if you have further questions about expenses, I would highly recommend you either reach out. Abjay, are you okay with people reaching out to you on LinkedIn or something?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. I'm available. Just search my name. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Abhijay Vuyuru, and shoot your question.
Salom, are you okay with people reach out to you, or are you leave me alone?
No, please do reach out if you have any questions. And same, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yep, just go look up for Salome, Stanford GSB. Sure, you'll find her there. For me, if you have other additional questions, be it about this or the GMAT or about the MBA in general, because I am on GMAT Club still, and yes, the title is 100% accurate, though I don't participate as much as I used to. I still respond to every message I get. My username is, I'll type it in here really fast. Do not laugh, because it was created when I was, there we go. This username was created as a joke. I never thought I'd be a part of GMAT Club as a representative, let alone someone in a position of authority. Joke's on me. Oops. Next time, take it more seriously. I get it. But so here's my username. Reach out to me on the forum. NIGHT. Yeah. And I will always respond. Paul's question and then closing comments. So what is one way a prospect can reach out about any available funding options through multiple institutions offer region by region as well as state by state? What are reputable sites? I don't really know if that's tangential to this conversation. And by the way, I would say, and please both of you step in and correct me if I'm wrong here. I would say if you have questions about funding options, there are websites you can Google to find loan options, but talk to schools. Schools will give you options. Usually schools like UVA has a relationship with Discover. Discover's a bank, but it's also a credit card. So they set up loans through them in conjunction with like others. There's Juno. So there are websites you can Google. There are places that you can find reputable sites. Again, I just mentioned your school's website. And any bank will also be able to kind of point you in the right direction. But both of you are international. I assume this is coming from an international viewpoint. So Abjay, let's start with you. Do you have any sites you'd recommend this person go to?
I mean, I think this is very, very specific to the country you are trying to search for. So sometimes in your own country, there may be some institutions or non-profits offering some scholarships.
Thank you, Salome, for this, by the way.
Yeah, so that's the link for GSB. Yeah, so you basically, it's a very specific question. You can check up for your country what are the options available. But typically, each MBA school on their website has these listing of financial aid options, and they're very, very specific to the school. So quick search on the school side will give you the financial aid options. But do search in your specific country or your place of work if they have any scholarships. It's a very, 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 very personal, specific question, I think, and that you can see up there.
Excellent. Salome, you've already answered it. Thank you very much. Folks, we're going to wrap this session up. We're going to apologize that we took this video on just a couple minutes late. We had a technical problem that we were able to work out. I think the session went well. I'm not going to lie. It's been a little while since I've been on camera. It's probably been about 6 or 7 weeks, maybe even 8 weeks since I've needed to join GMAT Club for a video. And it's probably been about 6 to 8 months since I've actually had to interview. So sorry if it was a bit of a bumpy ride here, but I hope all of you got a lot out of this. I hope you understand we probably totaled an additional $150,000 in additional costs, assuming no scholarships conservatively and assuming opportunity costs. So do keep that in mind. MBA is not just your sticker price. Schools try and make it clear. They try and be a little bit more transparent, but there are costs associated beyond that. And be prepared for when that happens. Abjay, Salome, any last comments before we wrap up here? Salome, let's start with you.
I think if you really want an MBA and you have a goal in mind, just as I said at the beginning, go ahead and do it. Do plan out, do research as much as you can about your financing options, because there are plenty, and I'm sure everyone will find a suitable solution. But definitely pursue it, regardless of the opportunity cost. It is going to pay off in the end. And just as Abhijay said, it is absolutely the best possibly decision that you can make for your career down the line too. So good luck everyone with applications, and do reach out if you have any questions.
Abjay, what about you, bud?
Yeah, I would just say, so I also did a video previously with GMAT Club where I talked about why you should definitely apply, like especially if you have an unconventional profile. So don't think that your dreams are too big. Just go apply to the school of your choice, and feel free to hit me up with any of your questions that you have on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer your questions. And yeah, don't give up. It's a fantastic journey. I would agree, it's a great experience. The bonds I built with my friends are gonna stay with me forever, and I would recommend everyone to whoever's interested to definitely get an MBA.
So really quick, Paul, you asked where to reach out to. Go to school-specific websites, and there are also government websites you can reach out to. Folks, it took me 3 to 4 years, and it took multiple tries for me to get into an MBA. This was not a straightforward journey. My debrief is on GMAT Club's YouTube page. Listen to Abjay, listen to Salome. It's an amazing these are amazing programs. They're amazing opportunities. Yes, the cost is astronomical. We've already established that. But what you get out of it is so much more than what you're paying for. So I hope all of you learned quite a bit. I hope none of you are scared. From myself at GMAT Club to Salome and Abjay, thank you both so much for joining us here. And we hope everyone watching enjoys the rest of our MBA fair. Take care, everybody.